and then also the streaming.
Well, good morning.
Hello,
Good
everyone.
afternoon.
Hi.
Buenas tardes, buenas noches, buenos dias, depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Hello, Marty.
Hi, Sam.
And you're in the Netherlands right now.
I am actually. Yeah. So here it is. Right now it's Goedenavond. Have a great evening because it's actually starting to get evening right now. Yeah. So I had to use a lot of lights here.
What city are you in the Netherlands?
Sorry, what did you say?
Netherlands are you in?
What part? I'm in the north.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people probably know Amsterdam. It's 2-hour drive from Amsterdam, actually.
Ah,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's a little country. So I think from Amsterdam, everything is about 2.5 hours at the top.
So what's the temperature today? And do you know how to say that in Fahrenheit?
Not yet. Yeah, I'm actually moving to the United States, so I have to learn to say it in Fahrenheit. I don't really know it in Celsius, so maybe you can translate it.
What is it in Celsius?
Yeah.
What's the
It's
temperature today?
7 degrees today.
Yeah,
7
degrees,
okay.
but it feels like less.
yeah, it's cold.
So what is that,
pretty
Sam?
cold.
You're the math guy, because 0 is 0 Celsius,
Yeah.
and we're like 30 degrees different or something like that, right? Like
Yeah,
in the United States.
0 degrees Celsius, something like.
a little bit
It's
of
just
both.
winter.
Yeah,
Marty, I've lived in the US 10 years and I still don't get the Fahrenheit thing. I'm still like, my phone is still in Celsius. So when they're like, what's the temperature? And I say it in Celsius, they're so confused.
Yeah.
It's hot though. Why is it? And I'm like, anyway.
yeah.
And leaders.
So when are you coming to the United States? You say you're moving to the United States?
Yeah, we're looking forward to move in April, actually. So we're now finishing up everything and preparing to make the big move.
Are you going to keep your place in the Netherlands?
No, it's actually we're going for a few years. So we're leaving everything behind. And that's also pretty scary, actually. But in another way, it's also really nice to actually start over, to get rid of a lot of stuff which you actually don't really need.
I know. It's amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, I have a storage unit in the United States right now. I only have 4 storage units, 2 for 2 cars and 2 for business stuff and for personal stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a house here in Puerto Vallarta and I've totally gotten more stuff. So it's crazy how much stuff I have, and I don't know what to do with all.
Yeah.
But where are you going, and where are you moving to in the United States, Marty?
Yeah, we're going to the San Francisco Bay Area. So we don't have a house yet. We don't know exactly which part we're gonna live, but somewhere near Stanford, actually, because my husband is getting a job there.
Great.
So I'm moving as a partner of an expat.
So you're, as they call the trailing spouse, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, you said your boyfriend, but yes, that's what they call you, as you're like the trailing spouse. And when I was in HR, we actually had to think a lot about that when we were hiring people that had to move across country. And we had to think about the spouse or the partner, about how they could embrace living in that new community and be able to thrive and feel comfortable. So, because it's a big change.
It's very important. I worked here in an academic hospital, so also a lot of people came from all across the world, and they had actually a HR team that was trying to help them also get settled. Sometimes there was a few years they helped even to get a job. Other years that wasn't possible anymore, but it's great to have some eye for that.
Some support.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say the as you're talking about, it's important to think about when you're moving people to different parts of the country or different parts of the globe. It's important to think about the whole family unit, right? Because if one person's unhappy after the move, then it can destroy the longevity of the relationship with the company, right? So
we hear a lot of stories that people will return within a year if they go together, and and the spouse doesn't really have a job or a new network there. So I'm really looking forward to start up all kinds of hobbies and clubs and sports relationships and work relationships.
But you do like a career coaching, I think I picked up, right?
Yeah, as
So-
well. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
amongst
you
other
can
things.
apply your own skills for how you adapt and move into your new environment.
Yeah, that would be great to translate that to my own life as
Your own
well.
life.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well, I see Sam sharing the screen, so I think that's an indication he's ready to get started. So I'll take the hint, Sam. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the People Strategies Forum. My name is Jules, and I help to host this forum. And sorry we had to cancel last week, but we are back. I think we're going to get that speaker back at a later date. I think that's correct, Sam?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Perfect. So you won't miss anything. But today we have a really exciting speaker. But before we get into all the introductions, just to let you know what we do here in case you're a first timer, maybe you're exploring what we do, we have a lot going on. So the People Strategies Forum really is a mastermind. We get leaders together, and our mission really is to help create workplaces where people thrive, where employers will reward and customers love. So everybody wins. And we do this by bringing a different speaker each and every week. And we also have a fabulous, very experienced panel of hosts to help us along the way. Now, throughout today's session, if you do have any questions or comments and you're on the live Zoom call, go ahead and write it into the chat and we will make sure that we get it answered for you. I'll be on the sidelines looking for your questions. And that really does help our speaker as well. So it kind of helps guide that conversation towards what is relevant to you. And even if you're watching this from somewhere else, maybe LinkedIn, Facebook, somewhere else, still give us your questions because we do always go back and answer them for you as well. Now, I would love to introduce the rest of the panel here that's helping me out. So we have Shah. Now, Shah has over 20 years of experience working in the corporate world, working in HR. She's been a coach, and she is now the current founder and CEO of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, and she's enjoying her best life over in Puerto Vallarta this morning.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I guess I'm becoming, I think they refer to us as expats. I've never really realized that that is a phrase until now, but apparently I am.
Bodying it. You got the kimono going. You are just expat.
Well, this is what they wear in Puerto Vallarta.
The official uniform. So anyone going to work, that's what you need. You need a kimono. The wonderful Sumit joining us as well. Sumit has over 16 years of experience working in HR. He's a talent expert. He's worked with some really large companies, Deloitte, Accenture being some of them. And he goes into companies of all different sizes around the world, helps them implement the latest and greatest HR strategies so that they can thrive. And we have Sam, the founder and CEO of Comp Team, the creator of the People Strategies Forum. And he is a talent management expert and compensation expert as well, helping all kinds of companies create better compensation programs and reward initiatives. So that's our panel. As you can see, a lot of experience. We always like to have fun here, keep it conversational. And to help us continue to do that today, we have the wonderful Mardi Huiting-Bijleveld. And she is, if you were tuning in a little earlier, she is based in the Netherlands, but she's coming to our side of the pond to the US. So that's very exciting. She's got an adventure ahead of her. So a little bit about Mardi. She is a coach, she is a counselor, a moderator, and in 2019, she founded her own coaching practice called Valenti, and she helps predominantly people that are starting out in leadership roles. Maybe they're a little lost and confused. They don't know what kind of leader they should be because it's all so new. So she really helps them find their journey and also implements a lot of the TMA method, which we talk about here all the time. So we're very excited to hear her insights on the TMA method, how she incorporates that into her coaching practice. And the topic really today is know yourself, build your career. So Mardi, welcome. Thank you so much for dedicating this hour to us. And we are excited for this convo today.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Try.
Yeah, well,
As long as I got the name correct, because then I'm going to be reading my.
I know. I thought you did really good there.
Yeah.
What was your assessment, Mardi? I mean, so first of all, Mardi, tell us how to say your name in your own tongue.
Yeah. So if I would say my name, it's Mardi Huiting-Bijleveld. So you were very, very close. And actually, even for my first name, it's easier to say it in like English or American, because in Dutch, a lot of people don't hear my name correctly if I use another, like an R. So Mardi, they think I said Mardi or Mardi T. So actually, thank you for helping me to pronounce my own first name better.
That's great. So Marty, tell us a little bit about how you got into your coaching and helping people. I mean, how did you come into this area?
Yeah, I actually, from the first time I can remember, I was thinking about stuff. So I was a really little child. I was already thinking about, okay, why do people do what they do? Yeah. I found it very interesting, and that was always something that stuck with me, those questions. And also, how can I help people to be more conscious about what they think and what they feel, and help them to take steps in the right direction. So I studied psychology because that was my interest. I thought I will be a psychologist, like I had it in my mind, with a couch and just doing psychology stuff. But actually, during my studies, I had a lot of courses that were about leadership, that were about coaching, about more positive psychology. So what are people's strengths and how can you develop them? And how can people be more happy, more successful, and also from a purpose base? So yes. I did a lot of other I had a lot of other jobs. I was trained as a management, like in management and project leadership. And I had also a lot of personal experiences that helped me to actually stop and to change also my direction in work and life. So in 2019, I took a, for me, very courageous step, because I had like I had a big job. But I thought, okay, I do have to listen to what is calling from deep down inside, and I have to start doing the things that are in line with who I am, who I want to be, and the talents that that are given to me. So then I started my own coaching practice, and actually, because I was asked for a job to be the coach and the intervention coach as well for a traineeship. So a lot of great starting professionals, they asked me to become their coach. And I thought, okay, so if I have at least one job, one client, then maybe this is the time to take a step in faith. And yeah, so that's actually how I came from that little girl that thought, okay, why do people do what they do, and how can I help them to do the things they really want to do and they are meant to do, to actually being a very happy coach and counselor and moderator right now, ready for the next courageous step.
Yeah, that's great. And your next step is coming to America in the next several months, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, be excited to hear more about your journey as you get established here. So, but one thing right now that's been going on the past several months, or probably almost a year now, is due to the pandemic has been a shock to everyone, of course. But one thing that's coming out of that is people have been rethinking their careers, rethinking their direction, what they want from life, and so forth. And this really is a great time to have this conversation, because that's exactly what you do, is help people understand what their passions, what their talents are, and then find the best way to apply that. And I know TMA method is one of your tools that you use in that regard. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So a lot of people have a coaching question that has to do with their work, to do with their career, or with themselves or relationships. But I found that in my practice, it always becomes a combination of being a professional and also being a person, being also a spouse, or in different relationships. And while I work a lot with helping people to get to know their self-beliefs and to most of the times change them a little bit. Also the beliefs about the world, to help them know their values, and what holds them back to pursue them. And for a whole other part, I work very happily with the TMA, because the TMA is, for me, it's an instrument that really helps to get language for things that are already in you. So you get a lot of vision on your drives, on your motivation, on your talents, on your competencies, and not only you get answer to the question, okay, so what is my preference, but also my preference in relation to preferences of others. So you get a lot of understanding in, okay, so why is my heart starting to beat if I'm doing that task, and someone else thinks, okay, why would you do that even?
Right. I know there was a great story that Peter Tybens told us. He was another TMA expert out of the Europe. Last year, he had a story where he came in and he did assessments across the organization, and the CFO took one of the assessments himself and found out that maybe what he was doing was not exactly his passion, and he always had an internal conflict of being the CFO at the company, but he kind of grew that up in his career, but he was never really happy or satisfied in the position. And after taking that self-discovery and learning from the TMA assessment, he found a new position in the company that just had him accelerate in his engagement. So that was a great way to apply it. And I know, Shar, you've gone through a whole process with your company, Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, right?
Yeah, well, just to explain what that was about. So I was one of the first to take the TMA method, obviously, because I was getting certified. And I had my debriefing with Andre Blum, who's obviously the founder and CEO of the TMA method. And one of the things that he identified with me is that it's funny because at first he says, well, you like to be the center of attention. Well, I kind of didn't see that as a positive, but in reality, I was like, well, maybe I kind of do. But at the same time, we found that I'm extremely creative. I'm very strategic. I'm very global. But there was an area, attention to detail, very meticulous, very much into the numbers. I'm not, right?
Yeah.
But what I did was, as I applied the TMA method with my leadership team. So, for example, we have a director and multiple managers. I like to talk about Susan, who's one of our directors, and her TMA reflected that she loves organization, she loves structure, she loves just that very regimented kind of detailed process. So one of the learnings that her and I had is, and we made an amazing team, is that we talked about, well, because a lot of times I just call her randomly, like in the evening or in the morning or whenever, and kind of rattle off all my grandiose ideas and idea generator. And then we looked at her TMA and she's like, no, I need structure. I need something that's more refined. So the two of us together took our two personality types and we came up with agendas, scheduled meetings, specifically how we're going to do our one-on-ones with our staff. What kind of measurements are we going to figure out from an outcomes perspective for each of our employees, and aligned their competencies with their behaviors, which ultimately will reflect in their outcomes. So I have many examples like that where we applied the TMA, but personally, I realized I also had to modify how I led the team.
Yeah.
So back to being the center of attention, I'm the owner. I don't want to be the center of attention, right? I want Susan and my managers to be the center of attention and their employees to be the center of attention. So I had to learn how to take myself out of the limelight.
Yeah. And
that was a healthy step to my company. So that's just an example of how we operationalize this. And it's been great. So yeah, fantastic tool.
Yeah, that's a really powerful. I mean, I think that that self-awareness is really important, and in sports, especially, I often have this conversation with startup companies versus well-established companies. And to that point, you mentioned as far as the need for structure. And so we all know that if we're starting a new company and a startup, there's not a whole lot of structure in place, right? And so if you hire a bunch of people that require that structure that simply doesn't exist at your place, and that's can be a very bad fit, right?
Yes. Yeah. And go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I thought that because the nice thing also about the TMA is that you get a lot of insight in like the will, the motivation of people, which don't always, which are not always the same as the behavior you see at first sight. So people can have developed a lot of competencies that are really useful, but in the end they will like burn out because they are using competencies that are not really in line with their like the motivation, their drives. So people can, if you are trying to hire people for your startup, and they can show that they are able to structure or able, in that case, work without structure, it will cost them so much energy that you will lose that energy for the creative part that you actually want to hire them for. And the TMA gives a lot of insight in that.
Yeah, I think I'm a good example there, because in doing these forums like this, I mean, when we're speaking right now, it's almost we're kind of a small group as it seems, but of course we're broadcasting to the entire world. So there's hundreds and hundreds of people that view these and so forth. But myself, if I have to get up on a stage and speak, that takes a lot of energy out of me. I'm naturally an introvert. And I like discussions in small groups like this, but if I have to go out on a big stage, I mean, it just saps the energy out of me. So I've adapted so I can do that from time to time, and I'm okay. But if I had to do that every day, I mean, I would just be completely exhausted. So I think that's a good example of how sometimes professionally we can build this shell around us that we can adapt. But staying a long time in that space can just be exhausting and not rewarding as a career.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something that's not very politically correct, Sam. I assume what you do is you stand there and you imagine people without their clothes on, right?
I've heard that as a technique, but I think that would just make me blush on stage the entire time. So I don't know if it's yours to work.
No, they always say that you got to do that because otherwise it gets your mind off of worrying about what people think of you. That you're like, well, you're pretty funny looking yourself. So no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, but I totally agree that the public speaking thing that's very interesting when you find that insight. And you realize, okay, well, that is probably a weakness, as you say, but you're a fantastic speaker, really. So, and you have a lot of knowledge. So how do you overcome that boundary? So,
yeah. So it's definitely a learned experience. So I guess, Marty, in some of your engagements with your clients and so forth, I mean, how do you, so the steps around how you discover what their talents are, can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. Of course. So sometimes they come with a really like fitted question to a TMA assessment, and sometimes I also introduce the TMA later in the trajectory because then it's more fitting to where they are in their discovery of who they are. But if I'm starting with a TMA. First day, I always introduce it, and they will first do a questionnaire. They do it online, just in their own home. I always say, please find a place and a time you feel most yourself. So please don't do it after you had a really difficult conversation with your boss, or in the morning if you're more of an evening person. Just make sure that it's a moment that you feel yourself. Mm-hmm. And then if you are answering the questions in the questionnaire, keep in mind, if it's up to me, what would I prefer? That's every time with all the 312 questions, that's always the question behind it. So if it's really up to me and everything else falls apart, what is my preference? Mm-hmm. So after they do that, I get the reports that's automatically formed, and I always share it. There's a bit discussion if you share up front of the conversation you have about the report, if you share the report, but I really believe if I have the opportunity to prepare myself for the meeting, I think the coach is also has to get the opportunity.
Right.
So the next part is that we have a talent conversation or talent talk. It's the way we name it. We first always start with getting to know someone a bit more. So in a coaching trajectory, we have a lot of more talks about that. So how do you become who you are, and how did you come where you are right now? So what are some key moments in your life? What formed you? Just to get the story, and it helps me a lot to, when we are walking through the report, getting some examples of someone already gave me to interpret the results. So the next step is we walk through the whole report together, and I will explain something. And the report, what you will find in the report is the 22 drives of the TMA with talents that are linked to that, and a lot of strategies you can use in communicating better, in developing more, in how can you also take a learning opportunity that fits your preferences. So it gives you a lot of insight. And the nice thing is that always after that conversation, I take about 1.5 hours, and sometimes even another time, depending on the question. People are always really relieved at first, because they think, oh, it's a personality test and I'm going to be, someone's going to judge me and I will find out all my worst traits. But they are always very happy that it's very positively written, it's very appreciative, and then they feel more strong, because they see, okay, so these are my strengths, and of course there are pitfalls linked to that. And they also get a lot of insight in, oh, okay, so if that is my preference, it also explains why I always have that discussion with that person, because my mind is so different than his or her mind. So yeah, I really like that. So that's actually how I use the basis of the TMA. And then depending on the question, there's also interest tests and capacity tests, and I will use that in upcoming talks.
So I love how the TMA approach is based in positive psychology. And so basically it focuses, like you mentioned, on your preferences, and our preferences can be both good and bad depending on the situation, right? So like, for instance, if you're very enterprising, or if you're very empowered, I guess, and to in a situation, you might become overbearing in some situations. You know, some might become, oh boy, he's really driven or whatever. And then in other situations, it can be very helpful. And so it really is situational, and it needs to be applied to what you want to do as your career and so forth, right?
Exactly. So I had, for an example, I had a coach, and she was working in a coffee bar, a very great, very social place. So she had a lot of connections through the day, a lot of talks with different people. But in the end of the day, she was always very tired. So she had no energy at all. And she sometimes got the feedback of other colleagues, why are you asking such personal questions to people? You just have to pour them coffee. And then there are other people. So, and then we did the TMA, because she was struggling as to, okay, what is going on? Because I am good at being spontaneous. I'm good with people. But why am I so tired? And why do other people think I am too personal? So we actually found out that with the TMA, and that she, where it comes to social empathy, she scored really high. So she had a lot of social empathy, and that means that she really wanted to engage in people's problems and analyzing what is going on the inside. I score also very high on that part, but she scored very low on another drive, and that is in English. I have to peek a little bit. Sociability and contact. Yeah, it's different words. I'm still in the Dutch language right now. So sociability and contact is about a lot of friendship, is about a lot of context and getting a lot of energy out of that. So she scored very low on that. So she wasn't really driven internally for having a lot of different contexts. She had the capacity, she had the competency, she was good at it, because our whole family was in that type of jobs. But then she found out, yeah, I can do it, but it's not really my, the thing that gets me going. So it gives you a lot of insight in why do I fit in a job, and why also maybe not.
Right. And I think that one thing that we found in just HR today, people, when we're talking people teams and people services it's the humanism. I mean, we need to know our employees. We need to be able to have better conversations, and this methodology, at least, it enables us to have these better conversations. I mean, how many managers start out there and they sit down, they sit down with we got the dogs in the
dog.
I'm sorry if you can hear that.
No, that's all right. And so, but a lot of times right now, it's we're in situations where, a manager may not know how to start the conversation, and having this assessment as a baseline it creates a comfortable space. And for instance, as if you share the details back and forth and before the conversation, you'd say, well, I see that you have a preference for this particular characteristic. So you really like detailed work. I mean, can you tell me more about that? I mean, and so it creates that dialogue and that comfortable space. Is, oh yeah, I love working on spreadsheets. And solving that puzzle is really engaging to me. And then the great thing for a manager is that they say, okay, well, this is their superpower. This is the thing that they love to do. And it's not only where I can put them on projects that they'll really excel in, but they can become the expert in the organization for that particular skill set. So it's a very powerful thing to do.
Yeah, it's very powerful to use for the employees you are leading. And I'm always very happy if a manager or leader himself also takes the TMA first. As a coach, I also use every method I use in my coaching. I always go through myself. So also with the TMA, because it's if the leader also knows his preferences, he also knows where he is not the right fit as a leader to the employees he has in some parts. So there are a lot of people depend a lot on they differ a lot in how much help they need in starting something new. So some people have a need for support. They have if you will sit next to them in the first week every day for 1 hour, they will go for miles. It's great. Some people they prefer to give them a laptop and say, have a nice week, I'll see you in a week. And if you are a leader that has that style, who is very self-dependent, then you can forget that some other people might need a little bit more support. And by giving a little bit extra, which is not really your style, but it's very effective for your employee to also thrive after that.
That's so important. I mean, there's situations where companies are simply hiring people and they're not taking in consideration that the manager who they're reporting into and that type of managerial style that she may have. And so for instance, I mean, if they're always so busy and they don't really have an open door policy, which we call in the US is, where, hey, come and talk to me anytime. If they're not like that, then they need to hire a certain type of people, or what will happen? Those people will come in, they're saying, oh, I can't handle this. And soon after a month or so, they leave and they find something else. I mean, so it's so important to do that. But another thing I want to bring up too, that's super important. We all know that the TMA method is a international tool. And Sumit, I'd like to get your perspective, because your expertise it expands borders. I mean, you do a lot of your work in multiple countries, and I think that what you've seen is that there's different practices in different places, right? Oh, you're on there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. So different regions, different practices, and I've seen managers who've got that style of leaving the door open, expecting people to walk in. And I think in a lot of traditional nations like India and other parts of Asia, you don't really want that. You want your manager to give you clear instructions in terms of, and it's not a dialogue, it's more of clear instructions. So it's one-way communication where the manager clearly outlays, this is what needs to be done. These are the resources you have, now go ahead and do it. And that's the end of the conversation. So they're not really as forthcoming in terms of engaging in dialogue or expecting people to reach out for support. So it can be a little bit of a culture shock. It can be a journey of learning for somebody to get used to the system of open door kind of management, or even using positive psychology techniques, because the way leaders and managers are perceived in this part of the world is you're up on a pedestal, and it's absolutely wrong on my part to ask you questions, because that's like questioning authority. So it's almost like an army kind of a setup where the general issues in order and there's no discussing or debating it. Just go ahead and do it, even if it doesn't even sound commonsensical. So questioning authority has been frowned upon, but with the advent of multinational firms and a lot of American culture coming in, because a lot of American companies do have offshoots in this part of the world, the culture is changing for sure. And now I think the transition to, at least among the younger folks, the transition to expecting managers to be answerable for decisions, having clear dialogue in terms of setting and managing expectations, I think that's all coming in. And positive psychology is definitely finding its place in this part of the world as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because as we know, there's different preferences, different cultures across the globe. And the workforce does different things. They have different demands. And the nice thing about the TMA is, since it's a global tool, they do a sample size they do a study in each location across the globe that has these different work preferences, and that's reflected in their tool. So I think that is super powerful. And as companies become more global, it's important for them to understand the cultural differences and how it applies in a a very diverse team, right? Yeah. So that's critical.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, submit.
Sorry, I was just adding on to Sam's point with a little bit of an example. So this morning, I had a teammate who joined on a team call, and I told her she didn't sound well at all, and if she wanted to take the day off, she could. She said, "No, I'm actually feeling fine, much better than yesterday. I only have a temperature of about 101. So yesterday was 104. I'm feeling much better today." So I told her to log off right that very moment, and literally had to push her off. So that's the way a lot of folks work here, where I mean, while the sense of ownership is obviously appreciated, but not at the cost of killing yourself.
Yeah, right. And that's another point. You're thankful that you're talking over the computer and instead of being face to face, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Today, that's much more safe.
Yes.
Yeah. And to add also on that multinational, I struggle with the words today too. But the nice thing also is the TMA. It's available. The questionnaires are available in a lot of languages. So you can also, me as a Dutchie, I can take the test also in Dutch. And the nice thing is, yes, there are a lot of sample groups, you call them here. Yeah, norm groups, we call them, in different cultures. That is very helpful because then you know, okay, so how do I match with the culture that is in the country I work in, or the company who's in. But they also found out that actually, if you look at people globally, there are no differences between the variety of drives by gender, by race, by location, or anything. So it's really personal, and I really like that. So if there are maybe a lot of people that always worked in India, for example, you said that people are very respectful to leaders and not really they look at leaders in like a hierarchy. But people also a lot of people in India have like a preference to look at people in an equal way, to don't really have the innate look at hierarchy. So those are the people that would also be they would find it much more easy to start also in an American company or another company where it's much more equal. So I had also one coach, a medical doctor. She's from Germany, which is also very much more hierarchical. There's a lot of more hierarchy in hospitals there, much more than in the Netherlands. So when we started TMA, because of our leadership question, we also did it in Dutch, and to combine it with the Dutch norm group, because she wanted to know, so, okay, I'm German, I was raised in that country, in that system, but I want to know how I am compared to the Dutch colleagues I will have the rest of my life.
Yeah. And I think that's
I just want to go ahead.
No, Shar, please.
No, I just noticed Daniel just made a comment here about ageism in the United States. And so when you made a comment about the United States and how there are differences with India and other countries, United States has some aspects that we definitely need to learn from our global colleagues. Another thought that came to my mind, I mean, that's about ageism, which is definitely true. Daniel, I definitely agree. That's a huge problem. I also think that it's also about how, for example, and I hate to use a political word that's going to probably make everyone's hair stand up. It's called the Me Too movement, the whole where women want to be treated more like equals, so to speak. And so one of the aspects that we analyze is the feminism, the femininity and masculinity in the workplace, right? Because we talked earlier about emotional intelligence or having the emotional sensitivity, which is globally or just kind of stereotypically considered a feminine kind of attribute, right? Having the emotional aspect, which is not necessarily the true.
Exactly.
So just to show you in my little world of my company, when you were talking earlier, Mardi, about how there's two different sides of the spectrum. So for example, one of my employees, one of my leaders did not score, as you say, very high in the assertiveness scale, but he scored on the opposite side, which is not a negative. Okay, it's not a negative rating, but he scored extremely high on the emotional sensitivity scale, right? So when I had my conversation with him about that, he says, well, I'm not assertive. That's a negative trait. I said, no, in our world, we're health advocates, right? I mean, I'm not going to go into my company, what we're all about, but we're all about health advocacy. I said, emotional intelligence and emotional sensitivity is extremely important, as much as the assertiveness side, the strong, powerful assertiveness side. We need people to have that emotional sensitivity, right? So that particular dialogue in itself had really opened up that one of my employees' eyes. He was like, okay, I totally now see that as a complete strength. And I didn't even think of it that way. I just thought it was a negative, right? But anyway, I just want to point out that the dialogues in these TMA discussions can get extremely deep. Back to the ageism side, we talk about things like, what is your perspective of being 60 plus and working with our company? What's your perspective of working as a quote millennial? What about a perspective as working as a Gen Z? And we blend it not only in their age, but we also talk about those attributes like emotional sensitivity and drive and power and all of those things. And the conversations could get so deep into it about how you were raised and how your perspective about how you're powerful in the workplace is so much different in this type of coaching than it was decades ago in the traditional HR sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
Well,
an extremely powerful tool.
Yeah, I love the concept of how we're talking about ageism, because the important thing here is that, and I think that in America, we haven't really, in the past, we've been thinking about, we put people in a box. Okay, this is a financial analyst, and that's the job, and we've been thinking about jobs more than people. Well, when we're trying to retain people, we need to think about their journey, what's going to make them fulfilled through that life journey. And as we all know, I mean, if we just look at our how we go through life, and we start out in our career, and we're all excited, we want to learn, and we want to develop, and we're very engaged in that way, and we're very hungry. We always say yes, give us this. Oh, we'll do that. Yes. And then as you are growing in your career, then you gain the wisdom that, okay, maybe this is not an area where I should engage in, because this is not my strength. And so maybe this is where I should start saying, okay, put a boundary up, because, well, that's not really my strength. Maybe I would perform much better in this area, and this is my preference. And then and that comes with that wisdom. And then as we also mature, we have other things that happen and we're now suddenly, it's not just us in our life. We have a family, or we have a spouse, we have children, and we demand a little bit more work-life balance. Some of those things change now. Then the children leave the household, and other things start happening in our life. I mean, we want to become perhaps more of an advisor. We're a strategist. Some of the things, I mean, we're moving through our career, and as we achieve fulfillment, our desire in our work also changes. And so we need to realize that in America, we can't put people in little boxes and expect them to be there the entire time. We need to evolve and work with them through their career, so we can retain them as a valued employee, keep them engaged, and so they deliver the best work, and they're happy at the workplace, and and happiness, as we know, rubs off on others. And so there's a lot of advantages to taking a more humanistic approach.
But I would say, Sam, one of my personal learnings and a lot of the topic today is about career and self-exploration and awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the aspect of the age part, okay? Many of us are now like jumping off the cliff. I think, Marty, you mentioned this. Maybe you left corporate like I did back. I left in 2016. And I started my entire world of entrepreneurship. What I've realized in my 50s, 51 now, I've realized that one of my competencies that I need to really work on is my technical and IT skills, right? Because IT and Sumit, I need to be calling you, but IT and information technology and app integration and all of that is changing on a daily basis. And it's extremely difficult for us, particularly in moving into entrepreneurship, of how to understand all the technology changes. Whereas some of my, let's just say, younger counterparts, or those that just got out of college recently, may have a completely different awareness of that than I did when I was in college. And I was going to the library and looking up those, what do you call those, Sam? The little code in the library books?
Do they even use that? The Dewey Decimal System? Is that what you were referring to?
System.
I'm not even sure if they use that anymore.
See, you and I are old enough to know what the Dewey Decimal System is.
I'm embarrassed now.
I would assume that our younger counterparts on this call today, I'm not calling you out. Okay, Jules, do you even know what a Dewey Decimal System is?
I learned it when I was maybe 7. But I was big on the library.
But if you recall, when we went to college, we had to know where to find that book. But now we just Google it, right?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, I went on a tangent, Marty. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know that system actually, but I also think the IT skills and like the IT focus, I think that also is also not only related to age, a little bit, but also in what company you are working or you have worked. So, and also within a company, it can differ a lot. So I had one experience that I had a job, my first job as a HR officer. And talent manager. I was part of a team, I think, of 15 people. I was the youngest. The next one in age, that is true, that it was 12 years older. So maybe it has to do a little bit with age, but also with culture. Because I was used to walk through the whole company with my laptop. So I had a meeting there and a meeting there, and in between, I would just sit somewhere where there was a coffee machine, and I would do my emails. But when I started that HR job, I think it was my second week, I started at home because I had to make a report and I had to focus. And well, now with my TMA, I know that focus is not really my strong suit. I like to diversify and do new things. And so I had to focus. And I did that at home. And then after, I think it was 9:30, I got a call from the secretary. She was very worried. Where are you, Marty? I said, I'm at home. I'm working on a report and I had to focus and it helps me here. And it turned out that in that team, you had to have like a permission, like special permission to work at home. And this was, I mean, I'm not really going to my 50s yet. So it's not a lot of years ago. It was, I think, a few years before the pandemic that was also in a lot of teams and companies still the idea, and also the angst to working remotely, working online. I actually also had my first Zoom meeting when the pandemic started. I had no idea you could also, I did some FaceTime with friends, but work-wise, it was all in real life. And I was also really anti, actually. I was really in the team of, okay, if you do coaching and you want to have a really deep conversation, you want to really make a difference, you have to be live in one room with each other. And I had a strong opinion about that. But then the pandemic came. So, well, you have to do something. And I like to diversify. So I used that talent of mine and I tried new things. And I was just trying to, let's see how it works. And actually, one coach said to me, it actually helped me to open up more because I was in control of closing my laptop and sending you away. While when I'm really in your practice, it was too hard for her at that moment. So it gives a lot of opportunities.
I have to just say this. I think this could be an entire people strategy discussion in itself. Because I think that this particular topic brings up a lot of thoughts for me as well, as far as when I was staying till 6 or 7 at night and sitting at my computer and thinking my boss thought I was so productive because I was sitting there late at night, looking out my office window. It's completely black. My kids are at home. I'm still in the office. My boss came in and said, Shar, why are you still here? I was like, well, I'm working really hard. I'm working on this PowerPoint or this report or whatever. And she finally said, well, you know what, maybe you need to go home. Now today, I would say being an HR person of a lot of companies, I think there's a lot of companies really struggling with this idea of trusting how their employees are productive at home. I also think that the whole age piece that Daniel brought up is also very, very critical perspective about that. Because I think different generations are used to working on their laptops anywhere, like in a coffee shop or on a beach, like Sam works, or, or anywhere, where I'm teasing. But, but everybody knows like a Sam is working really hard, but he just happens to be doing it from a beach, right? I think generationally, it's very hard. And I think different generations of leaders and employees are really struggling to adapt to this. And I think the whole, this whole thing that we've had in the last couple of years has really thrusted us to reanalyze how are we productive? How are we using our talents and strengths and still getting the job done, even if we're not sitting in a cubicle at 6 or 7 at night.
I think also in this whole pandemic, there are a lot of people who also got also a better insight in what way am I productive actually. So the TMA is a great method to get to know about your drives and what job and what environment you will thrive. But I think the pandemic is also in a way like a mirror for a lot of people. So people had to that were working 2-hour drive away from home every day, 5 days a week. And then they were at home and then they found out, okay, so it's great to have more time with my family. I had no idea how great that is. Yeah. As well as people who are really missing all the social talks at the coffee machine that are really great. They really like to work somewhere in an office with other people, while others also find that they are way more productive being on their own, just in their own environment, having their chill clothes on. So it's you also learn a lot about your own preferences.
Wouldn't you think though, there's some people that are feeling somewhat threatened in this new work atmosphere? I would say some prior work experiences used to driving the 1.5-hour, 2-hour commute, showing up in the morning by the coffee machine, getting the cup of coffee and having their social chat about, what they did over the weekend. But now everything's so much different now, right? Because now we're doing Zoom calls, we're sitting in our homes, we're talking. I think there's a certain population of our employees that are feeling somewhat threatened by this new atmosphere and feeling like they're being judged because they don't know how to be measured, just sitting at home and their boss is not constantly seeing their work productivity. And I think that's a real challenge for leadership to adjust to. So I think that, like, for example, the TMA method could really analyze that dialogue, like your conversation with your employee of, how can you adjust to this new working atmosphere? My expectations of you are going to be modified just because I don't see you at the water cooler in the morning and sitting at your desk all day long. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a very different kind of leadership that leaders need to adjust to.
Yeah, the TMA gives a lot of language and support for that conversation, because you will see that by the TMA profile, you can see what people will probably have a hard time during this COVID when they are working at home, and what people will probably be more productive because of their preferences. So there's no right or wrong. It's just if the environment and if the situation changes, it also changes who will thrive and who will have a hard time. And that is a great way if leaders can have that discussion with their employees. And the TMA can be really helpful to that.
Right. Well, it is. We are approaching the top of the hour, and of course, we've been talking about TMA this entire time. So, and they are also our sponsor. So, I do want to point out that if anybody listening would like to try an assessment and see what that's like, feel free to send me an email at sam@compteam.net, and happy to show you what that looks like. And then, but they also, TMA has a lot of free tools on the internet, such as the competencylibrary.com, which is if you're putting in competencies in your organization, there's a ton of great open source material there that you can leverage. And also there's other types of apps that are very helpful. I mean, Char's used these in her business, and I know that a lot of our clients love the apps that TMA has, also free to use and very useful.
Right. And I just have to interject here, because when I was creating talent management strategy and a major healthcare system, they were wanting me to, the executives were wanting me to create some kind of hands-on, just-in-time, easy to use, something that could be smart. These are free, folks. These are free and they are at your fingertips. And it's a matter of helping your leaders utilize these tools, not only for interviews, coaching, development, and also career transformation. Amazing tools. So yeah, definitely talk to us about these. We know how to help you with your companies as well as your own career transformation utilizing these tools.
Right. I mean, TMA does, they do offer a lot of free things. They do have a paid platform for their assessments and a total integrated talent management suite. And so that's where they make their profits and so forth. But there is plenty of stuff that is free to use on their system, and that makes it a great tool.
Yeah, I actually recommend it also for coaches who don't even do the TMA yet, but they want to develop some competencies. I also recommend the TMA just as a teaser, and then they can know a lot of ways how they can develop certain skills. Right.
Also, I want to acknowledge our next week's speaker. We're going to continue our discussion about selecting team members with the right mindset for a growing company. Denisa Williams is going to help us with that conversation. She's and like you, Marty, she's also in the psychology space, and so she has a background there, and so it's going to be a really engaging conversation. So as we I know this this conversation has been really, we've been going on and on. It's quite engaging. And so I really appreciate Marty for your expertise here. And I know that you're going to be taking the next few months off because you're going to be moving to America and so forth, but you're going to eventually be ready to consult again here in the US. And so if people have questions or if they want to reach out to you in the meantime, how would they do that?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the time of peace I will have the next few months, but I'm also really looking forward to start in the US online and also live for people there. So if they want to reach out now, you can already give me an email. I think maybe it can be in the chat. It's info@valenticoaching.nl because I'm still in the Netherlands and I will work my way up to the American website when I'm there. But I would really like to get in contact with everyone if I can do anything when I will have my working permit in the US.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. All right.
You said you were a Dutch delight, so I wanted to throw that in there because I think that's a really cute comment to brighten anyone's day.
Well, thank you so much. I will take that home very happily.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for another great conversation, and we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum.
Yes. Right. Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.